Hi, everyone. So today we're going to talk about invasive species. Specifically, we're going to talk about a species called zebra mussels. Before we begin, just wanted to let you know, I'm recording this on Crazy Hair Day. This is my crazy hair. It's just a wig. This is not my permanent hair. So don't be alarmed and try not to be distracted either. All right, so the warm-up question for today is, an invasive species is a species that moves to a new ecosystem where it does not have natural predators. How might invasive species impact an ecosystem? So for this warm-up question, just take your best guess and avoid using Google. I really want to know what you think. And I will review your answer on Google Classroom. So today's agenda, we just did the warm-up. Next, we're going to introduce invasive species really quickly. Then we'll do a reading about zebra mussels. And finally, we will do our exit slip. Actually, I can't remember if there's an exit slip. I will double check that there's an exit slip. Okay, so the focus question for today is, what is the impact of changing biotic and abiotic factors in an ecosystem? The learning target is I can use evidence to explain the impact of changing biotic and abiotic factors in an ecosystem. All right, so really quickly, a quick introduction to invasive species. So last class, the last unit that we studied was on the Chesapeake Bay. And we studied how Chesapeake Bay changed after the introduction of humans, or rather, after the introduction of large-scale fishing. So here's the food web from around 1700, and then here's the food web from around 2000. We saw once humans started overfishing or large-scale fishing in the Chesapeake Bay, a lot of species became rare. Some species went extinct, and just the food web was totally rearranged in a lot of ways. And although humans are not considered invasive species, the way that we can change ecosystems is actually very similar to how invasive species change ecosystems. So invasive species come from other ecosystems, and when they get to a new ecosystem where they don't have any natural predators, they can very dramatically change the food web. So that's a lot like humans. You can think of invasive species kind of like how humans changed the Chesapeake Bay food web. So typically when an invasive species comes into a food web, it's going to compete with some species that are natural, that are native to that environment. And they're also probably going to increase or decrease the sizes of other populations of species. All right, so today we are going to learn about the zebra mussel, which is a invasive species that came from like northern Asia, so like Russia, China, that area, and it came to the United States, and it is now invading our waterways. So as I'm going to read this article on my slides because I like the pictures, and the pictures are I think they're interesting, but you will have to, as I read this article, I want you to annotate the article on this worksheet. This worksheet is called Lesson 14, Zebra Mussels, Article Annotation. It is on Google Classroom. So as you read, I want you to stop at least 3 times to do one of these things. First, you could explain a thought or reaction to something you read. Second, you could describe a connection to something you've learned or read previously. Or third, you can ask a question about the reading. So for these 3 things, you can just leave a comment. So leave a comment to say what you need to say. All right. The other 2 things that you can do are highlighting. So you can highlight in orange something in the reading that is confusing or unfamiliar, or you can highlight in yellow a word that you do not know. Whatever you highlight, I will go through and explain to you. So please only highlight things that you that you're really confused about. All right. So remember, as I read this article, please stop at least 3 times, pause this video, stop, and leave an annotation. Right? So what is a zebra mussel? The zebra mussel is a small freshwater animal with 2 shells like a clam. It is named for its striped shell. This tiny creature may look harmless, but it can cause big problems. The zebra mussel is not native to North America, but arrived in this part of the world about 30 years ago. So you can see the zebra mussel, its shell has these like dark brown and then light brown lines, and that kind of looks like a zebra. Of course, zebras are black and white, and these are like a dark brown and a light brown, but you can guess why they might be called zebra mussels. So zebra mussels cling to any hard surface, including native mussels and other animals with shells. This can cause these animals to die because they can't eat. Zebra mussels are filter feeders, so they pump water through their gills and strain out microscopic animals and plants called plankton. Zebra mussels can quickly clear the plankton from huge bodies of water, leaving little food for the native mussels and other animals. So zebra mussels are filter feeders, and we've studied filter feeders before. We've studied, when we talked about Chesapeake Bay, we studied oysters. So we know that filter feeders, they filter algae and plankton and sometimes bacteria from the water. That's their food source. And zebra mussels cling to any hard surface, including other zebra mussels. So here you can see a lot of these zebra mussels are clinging to other zebra mussels. And that can cause some problems. As you can imagine, whatever zebra mussels are kind of in the middle of this mess, they're probably having a hard time eating, a hard time filtering things from the water. Zebra mussels can also cause millions of dollars in damage. So the mussels clog water pipes to businesses and power plants. They damage boats, docks, and other structures. So here in this ring, you can't tell, but this is actually a pipe. And the inside and the outside of the pipe have been covered in zebra mussels. So for businesses and power plants and water treatment facilities that rely on water going into the pipes, this can cause a lot of damage. It can cause millions of dollars of damages. So zebra mussels are, they can be pretty annoying. All right, so next we're going to talk about 2 different invasions. The first zebra mussel invasion is in the Great Lakes. I'm sure you know, but just as a reminder, the Great Lakes are these 5 big lakes in between the United States and Canada. And so there is a river right here called the St. Lawrence River. And this river connects to the Atlantic Ocean. So zebra mussels probably came to the Great Lakes on this St. Lawrence River, on a boat that was traveling from the Atlantic Ocean to the Great Lakes. And so I remember, so I think you guys remember, I'm from Michigan. I grew up right there, that kind of that greenish part on Michigan in the water. And growing up, I remember when I was very young, the water was almost green because there was, as you can guess, there was quite a bit of algae in it, a healthy amount of algae. But as I got older, the water became a darker blue, and it became very clear. And that's because zebra mussels had slowly taken over the Great Lakes, and they were filtering out a lot of the algae that was in the water. So the first thing we're going to study is that Great Lakes invasion. So zebra mussels were first discovered in a small lake in the Great Lakes system, Lake St. Clair, in 1988. Scientists believe the mussel was introduced by one of the large ships that travel across the Atlantic Ocean, carrying cargo between countries. Soon, scientists were finding zebra mussels in other areas of the Great Lakes systems and rivers connected to the Great Lakes, such as the Mississippi and Ohio rivers. Even today, scientists continue to find new zebra mussel invasions as far away from the Great Lakes as Texas and California. So I'm pretty sure this lake right here, kind of by Detroit, this is Lake St. Clair, and that's where we first discovered zebra mussels in 1988. But because the Great Lakes are connected by rivers, the zebra mussel has slowly invaded other parts of the Great Lakes since 1988, and other rivers, including the Mississippi River, and even as far away as Texas and California. So, how do these mussels spread so quickly? A single female can produce up to 1 million eggs each year. The young mussels float along water currents and eventually attach themselves to hard surfaces, like rocks on the riverbeds and the bottoms of boats. They form dense colonies with as many as 10,000 mussels in a single square foot. 10,000 mussels in a square foot. That's probably about the size of your computer screen or your iPad. 10,000 mussels just in that space. That's quite a few. And so the reason they travel so quickly is because females produce 1 million eggs. And young mussels are really small. So small, in fact, that they float. And if they float, they can travel very far. So that's why they're very quick to invade river systems and other lakes. Cool. So the second invasion is an invasion that hasn't quite happened yet, and that is the Hudson River invasion. Well, actually, the Hudson River invasion has happened, but we're going to pretend like it hasn't happened. So we know zebra mussels invaded the Great Lakes in 1988. But there were already scientists who were studying the Hudson River, and they knew that it was only a matter of time before zebra mussels arrived there to the Hudson River, because the Hudson River is connected to the Great Lakes via rivers and canals. So scientists in the Hudson River started studying the river, and they wanted to see how zebra mussels would affect the biotic and abiotic factors in the river. The Hudson River ecosystem is very different from the Great Lakes. Lake water settles into layers, with cool water near the bottom and warm, clear water above. So this is because the sun, heat from the sun can only go so far into the water. So it heats the top layer of the water, and it can't really heat the bottom layer of the water very, very, very well. So if you've ever gone swimming in a lake, then in the shallow area it's much warmer, in the shallow area it's very warm. And if you go kind of in the middle of the lake, at the top it's going to be much warmer than if you dive down. When you dive down, it can get very cold very quickly, and that's just because the sun's heat can only go down so far. So the water kind of hangs out in layers. But in the Hudson River, water flows from the mountains to the Atlantic Ocean. The last 150 miles of the Hudson River is significantly affected by water from the Atlantic Ocean. The salt water from the ocean mixes with fresh water from the river. The tides from the ocean mix the water from top to bottom. This area of mixed salt and fresh water is called an estuary. In the estuary, tides also stir up materials from the riverbed, making the water cloudy. Little sunlight can pass through the water, and less sunlight means fewer plants and phytoplankton. So, in an estuary, we have salt water and fresh water. Salt water is carrying lots of salt, so it's actually heavier than fresh water. So salt water kind of hangs out towards the bottom. Fresh water floats on top because it's lighter. It has less salt. It has no salt. But in the Hudson River, because of the tides from the ocean, these layers, they actually mix. They mix quite a bit. And because they mix so much, the tides they stir up all of the dead organisms and all of the dirt that's on the riverbed. And that makes the water really cloudy. And because little sunlight can pass through the water, that means that there are fewer plants and phytoplankton in that part of the Hudson River. So scientists wondered how zebra mussels might affect the ecosystems of the Great Lakes and the Hudson River. They also wondered if different biotic and abiotic factors in the ecosystems might lead to different effects from the zebra mussels. Soon they would find out. So next class, we're going to look at how zebra mussels affected the Hudson River. We're going to look at different biotic and abiotic factors. Really quickly, so that was the whole article. So you should have stopped at least 3 times to highlight words that you don't know, or leave a comment about something that made you think about something else. Now, we're going to go to the bottom of this worksheet. And what you're going to do is you are going to fill out this table according to the article you just read. So I want you to, so there are 2 ecosystems. The first one is the Great Lakes. The second ecosystem is the Hudson River. What you're going to do for each of these things, you're going to write a description. You're going to write down some biotic factors present. You're going to write down some abiotic factors present. And then you're going to kind of guess how zebra mussels might affect these ecosystems. So let's start with description. Description is kind of vague, so you'll notice that I put a little 1 next to description. If you go all the way to the bottom, I wrote some questions for you, some questions to guide your thinking. So the questions are is this ecosystem saltwater or freshwater? Is it an ocean, a river, or a lake? Does the water flow in one direction, many directions, or remain mostly still? So those are the questions you can answer for description. Biotic factors. Remember, biotic means living. So what are some of the living things in these ecosystems? Abiotic factors means non-living. So what are some of the non-living factors in these ecosystems? Specifically, what abiotic factors are different between these rivers, or between these waters? So I'll give you a hint. Great Lakes have fresh water, whereas the Hudson River has fresh water and salt water because it's an estuary. All right, and then for this one, you're just going to guess how zebra mussels might affect those ecosystems. Right now, we don't know how zebra mussels will affect them. So you're just going to take your best guess. For all of these boxes, you can just write a few phrases. You don't have to write in full sentences. It doesn't have to be extremely detailed, but I would like you to get sort of like the main ideas. All right, and earlier in class, or earlier in this lesson video, I said there was an exit slip. There's not an exit slip. We actually didn't have time in class to do the exit slip. So there's no exit slip, so this is the last thing that you have to do for this lesson. All right, if you have any questions, you can leave me a comment on Google Classroom, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. Otherwise, have a great day, and I'll see you next time.